Hi everyone, Dr. McDowell here. Today we're going to be talking about the Words Their Way Qualitative Spelling Assessment. This is an example of one of their books, and this is the forms that I'm going to show you come out of this book. This is actually the 6th edition. They have a 7th edition now that I like even better, but I do want to put a plug in for this assessment. It's really wonderful. It'll assess children kindergarten through 12th grade. So regardless of what age group you're working with, and it will work with adults actually. So no matter who you're working with, you can actually use this assessment tool with students. And so I do want to give them a little plug. It's a wonderful tool to identify your spelling stage of your students. I have other videos where I talk about that in detail. This video is just solely for the purpose of showing you how to actually conduct the assessment. And the good news is it's super easy. This is literally kind of like just giving a spelling test. It's not a spelling test, and we'll talk about the difference, but you're going to give it just like a spelling test. And so I think probably everyone in the country has had a spelling test at some point in your life. And so this should be pretty simple for you to do. I have a little PowerPoint with about 4 pictures on it just to show you the forms you'll need, and then we'll kind of talk about some logistics. So give me just a second to share my screen and get that all ready, and we'll be ready to go. Okay, so as you can see, this is a little quick video, probably not going to be more than 3 or 4, maybe 5 minutes, on how to actually conduct the Words Their Way Qualitative Spelling Assessment. And it's just so that you can make sure you have the right forms. For my students, I'll already have provided the forms for you. So this is just so you'll know what to do with them. But again, if you're watching this and you have the Words Their Way book, the forms are all in the book for you. So first of all, one of the things that you need is what's called a spelling inventory. It looks like a spelling word list. It's basically what it is, but we call it a spelling inventory. It's an inventory of words that we're going to use to give the assessment. And there are 3 different spelling inventories in the Words Their Way program. The first one is called the primary. It's appropriate for kindergarten through 3rd grade. That's the one that we're actually going to use for our purposes in my class. But there is a second one called an elementary spelling inventory, and it's appropriate 1st through 6th grade. If you're in doubt and you're working with 1st graders especially, I just think it's better to use the primary one, because you'll catch those kids that are on that very beginning end. And if you want to know more about that and the spelling stages, there's another little video that just talks about the 5 spelling stages. And I encourage you to watch that video because it's much more in depth about all that. We're not going to talk about that in this video. I'm going to assume you already know all that and you just want to know, how do I give the test? How do I give the assessment? It's not really a spelling test. The reason it's not a spelling test, first of all, is because they're not going to practice the words ahead of time. They're also not going to get a grade. They're not going to ever see the results of it. Only you will. And they just do the best they can. You expect them to spell them wrong because not all the words are appropriate for the child. So there's a whole lot of reasons why it's not a spelling test. It's a spelling assessment. It's designed for you to identify the spelling stage of the child. And so anyway, we do have those 2. There's actually 3 different inventories. One is appropriate all the way up through adult. But these are the 2 you'll use in elementary schools. The next thing you're going to need is a form, a piece of paper for them to write on. I cannot emphasize enough how important it is for you to use a prepared form. Especially with these young kids, you will first of all waste all of your time having them number their paper. And if you have ever worked with young children, you know that if you don't give them a little box to write that word in, they are going to write all over that page, and it's going to be hard to read and hard to find the words, and the numbers are going to be off, and it's just going to be a mess, and you're going to waste a lot of time. So especially for my students, you must use this form. This is as simple as a Word document. I just inserted a 2-column table and numbered it 1 through 26 because that's how many words are on the assessment. and made the boxes nice and big for young children. They need a nice big box to write in. You don't need to worry about lined paper on, notebook paper and all that kind of thing. This just gives them plenty of space to write. And so this is a really crucial thing, to have an appropriate instrument to have them write in. And then once you have completed the assessment, to score it later, which is a whole nother video of mine, but to how to score it, you're going to need a thing that looks just like this. It's called a feature guide. And there's actually a different one for the primary spelling inventory, or the elementary spelling inventory, or the upper elementary one. So whichever spelling inventory or word list you use, then you need to make sure you have that same matching feature guide. This is how we score it. And I've got a whole nother video on that if you're interested in knowing how to score it later. And then the other thing you'll need whenever you're scoring is this power score chart. So those are just a few of the basic things you'll need. Give me just a second. Okay, so I'm going back to our spelling inventory to show you. You'll notice the spelling inventory has a list of 26 words, and for each word there is a sentence. Use the sentence they provide. Don't try to get creative and make your own sentences. That invalidates your data. Just use it the way it's done. And you literally give this like a spelling test. You can actually give this to a whole class of kids, or a small group of kids, or individually. So that's one of the nice things about this assessment. I will encourage you, though, if you're giving this to more than one child at a time, if you're giving it to a group, you need to make sure that they're not able to see each other's papers. And I don't want to say that kids will cheat, because they're not cheating, but they might want to just compare their answers with the other kids to see how they're doing, and just see how theirs measures up. So we don't want to have them do that. Otherwise, the data is not valid. We want to see how they know how to spell it, not how their friends do. But anyway, so some ways to do that when you're in a small tutoring session, like sometimes we are, or in a guided reading group, is to have them put little folders up, like little test folders. Or you can have them, if you're working on the floor. Sometimes when we do our field experiences, our reading buddies, sometimes we're having to work on the floor and that kind of thing. So you can have them each have a clipboard with their paper on it and sit back to back. Or you can have them like sit on the floor, lay on the floor on their stomach and put their little test folder up. And there's several ways to do that, so that they're not sharing their spelling ideas with each other. You'll notice the way that the list is designed. It starts with easier spelling features and gets progressively more difficult as you go through the list. So for that reason, it's super important that you don't skip words. You start on number 1, you go all the way through number 26, go in the order it says, and have them spell them the best they can. I usually kind of preface it ahead of time that, hey, they're going to get a little bit more difficult, and that's okay. We don't expect you to know how to spell all of them. We just want to see how first graders or second graders think about spelling when they have words they don't know how to spell, how they think about them. And so make sure that you start on number 1 and go through number 26. You also want to make sure not to skip any, but also use the sentence. So you're literally going to just do it just like a spelling test. Number 1, and make sure they're all, in the right box. And the words fan, I could use a fan on a hot day. Fan. You're going to say the word once, say the sentence once, then repeat the word again, give them time to spell it. If you have someone that's taking a long time on a word and you're giving it to a group, you can let them just go ahead and skip to the next word, and then you can come back at the end and let them go back and finish attempting any of the ones that they were taking too long, and so they're not holding up the group. The best way is to get all 26 words. If you have some really, really emergent kind of readers and writers, you may realize after about 10 words that they've already misspelled 8 or 9 of them. The rule of thumb as far as this assessment is if they have 7 misspelled words, technically you can stop. But for my class, it's really hard for you to analyze it, believe it or not, if you don't have all of the words in there. So even if you have to break it up into 2 or 3 little, like give them, maybe 8 or so words and then take a break and then come back to it later and do a few more and then come back later and do a few more. That might be a way to do it, but it's really helpful, and you'll get much more information if you can get all 26 words on the assessment. But technically for some of these really, really young ones, you're probably not going to get that. It'll probably take you a while just to get 8 or 10 words. So as long as there are 7 misspelled words on the assessment, you can analyze it. You just have to do some adjustments to the form. Okay. Let me see what else okay, I'm gonna stop sharing. Give me a second. I'm gonna pause this. Okay. You need to see my face for this, I think. So it's really important not to help them. You want to help them. I know you do. You're thinking, oh gosh, I just want to help them because they're trying so hard. It's not a test. It doesn't matter if they misspell every single word, okay? Because the point of it is not to see if they know how to spell these 26 words. There's spelling features within the words that are in an incrementally developmental progression, and we're seeing which one of them they know how to spell already and which ones they're not yet spelling, and what they're ready to be learning about. And so it's a way for us to differentiate that instruction on spelling and word study. So don't help them. And one way you might help them and you don't even realize it is when you're actually just reading the words. Remember, you want to use a natural voice. Just say fan. I could use a fan on a hot day. Fan. That's all you do. Don't do this. I know you want to. Don't go fan. Fan. I could use a fan on a hot day, right? I look ridiculous just for you. I'm doing that so you can get the message. Don't do that, because then you're coaching them. You're helping them like break down the word and hear all the individual sounds. And you just need to say it naturally and let them in their head say it and see what individual phonemes they're hearing and stuff. Okay. So don't help them, even though I know you want to. Make sure that you have nice sharpened pencils. I really, really discourage mechanical pencils because they just want to play with them and they break them a million times. But so I have extra pencils if you're going to do that. And erasers, sometimes they're going to erase, and that's okay if they, the other thing, this is my last little thing, is when they're doing the assessment, they're going to look at your face to see if they're getting the words right. Okay. They're going to look up and go, is that right? They might even ask you, is that right? Okay. And you don't want to lie and say it's right when it's not, but you don't want to tell them it's wrong, because if you do, they're going to change it and then your data is not valid. So the way you handle this is when they ask, is this right? You just say, you're doing a great job. That's awesome. And they are, because they're making an attempt and they're doing the best they can. So they are doing a great job and they are awesome. And so you're not lying. But if you tell them that it's wrong, they're going to erase. And we don't really want to erase. If they come up with on their own that they need to fix it and they erase, that's great. But otherwise, we want to just see what they know. Okay. So you can give them words of encouragement and positives, like you're doing a great job, awesome, but don't say almost, because they're like, oh, I almost got it, and they're going to erase and change it up, and then you don't, the data's not valid, right? So be really careful about that. Don't help them. Don't stretch out the word. Don't over enunciate. Just read the test naturally, get the data that you can, and then on the next video, we'll learn all about how to actually score it. So good luck out there, and I know you'll do a great job.